We're Aaron and Dave Tashin, co-hosts of the Mindful Educators podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others.
Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Coming up on episode 167 of the House of EdTech podcast, we're talking digital citizenship. We have an EdTech recommendation to help with research skills, and we have yet another awesome House of EdTech VIP. So strike up the band.
Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nessie. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn.
Welcome to episode 167. I'm happy to be back hosting another episode of the House of EdTech podcast, and I look forward to recording a few more shows while Chris is out on personal leave. Again, I'm your substitute host, Derek Larson. You can find me online at Lars3EB pretty much anywhere. Thanks again for your kind words and feedback on the last episode. If you want to leave feedback, feel free to contact me directly online, almost anywhere, at Lars3EB, or by visiting chrisnessie.com/feedback. We have a great show today, but I want to start with some announcements first. Coming soon, the 2020 House of EdTech App Smackdown. It's going to be here before you know it, folks. The goal each year is to have you and other listeners share their favorite EdTech tips, tools, apps, programs, and more. Chris prefers audio clips, as this is a podcast, and you can submit audio by going to chrisnessie.com/feedback. You can also send Chris an email with the attached audio. Please put Smackdown 2020 in a subject, and no matter how you share with Chris, you get your submission in by Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Be sure to include who you are, where you're from, what your role in education is, and then talk about your favorite EdTech item. And also let us know how people can connect with you. Did you know about the House of EdTech Facebook community? It's only ever discussed here on the podcast, so if you aren't yet a member and would like to join it, go to chrisnessie.com/Facebook and request access. For our EdTech recommendation, I recently attended an online librarian conference where I learned about a great new-to-me tool called Scribble. Scribble can be found at Scribble, SCRIBLE.com, so just one B. Scribble is a tool that makes teaching research and citations much easier. You know, a lack of research skills leads to a lack of career readiness. That's why it's so important that we are helping our students learn how to research properly and how to cite their sources. This is important. Well, Scribble is a great tool that makes it really simple. Now, I haven't personally used it, but I learned about it in this session, and I'm excited to get using it, not only in the library, but with the teachers in my school and helping them to find ways to use it with their students. Scribble has both a Chrome and a Microsoft Edge extension, making it super easy to save a copy of articles so they don't disappear. These articles are saved directly to an online library for each user. Okay, Scribble also adds a toolbar that can be used for marking up the article right in the browser. And what's even better is there's an auto citation capture tool that will let you cite in either MLA, APA, Chicago, and many other citation requirements. But of course, you want to always check that over, even over the automatic capture, because sometimes it picks up things you may not want to, or sometimes it only picks up one author, not both authors. But what's even better is you can go ahead and edit that automatic citation, which is amazing. And again, like I said, all the resources that you save are saved to your online library. Scribble has a built-in PDF viewer that allows you to both upload and download those PDF files, which makes it even better for finding and tracking all of these different research resources. Okay, it also has a tagging system that makes finding all of these different resources and sorting them out super slick. You have drag and drop throughout the entire online library. Plus, there's a Google Docs add-on available. It basically puts a sidebar right into your Google Doc, which makes it very simple to find and utilize your resources you've saved. You can pull your notes and your quotes out into your paper and have auto citations and sources created. Okay, Scribble then creates an in-text citation based on what you've just pulled in. And that in-text citation is an active link back to the student's library with the actual article used. So no longer are you having to dig through and find it. You can literally just click that link and boom, you're right over to the actual article that the student saved in their library. You can add your outline. So using Scribble, you can create an outline, and then you can add that outline directly into your Google Doc to help give you a better starting point, help your students to find a great place to start. Sometimes that's one of the hardest things is starting. And if you have your students create an outline, you can literally import it right into your Google Doc to give them a starting point. You also have a teacher analytics dashboard that allows you to see where each student is in the process of their paper, including the number of sources they found, the different types of sources they found, plus the number of words written. So you can actually look at it and say, okay, Susie has a great number of sources, a good selection, and she's on her way. Man, poor Billy over here, he must be struggling. He only has 2 or 3 sources when he should have 5 or 6 by now, and they're all the exact same type. So that gives you a chance to go right over and help Billy and see what he might be lacking so he can have some one-on-one. All through that teacher analytic dashboard, you can see what's going on. Teachers and co-teachers for each class will have access to the student libraries, which is fantastic. Now, I will tell you, this is not a totally free tool. There is a free education plan available that allows you to individually check it out. There's not a free plan for you as the teacher, but more you as a student, if you will. So if you're taking college coursework, maybe you're working on a master's degree, working on a PhD, maybe you are still working on your undergrad, this could be a great tool for you that would allow you to have free access to most of the options, most of the services available, most of those features, but yet on a free tier, which is great. Lets you kind of see what's going on. Now, if you want to use it as a teacher, the Education Pro Teacher Plan is $119.99 per year. That's when you pay annually. They also have a price per semester as a teacher plan there. But to me, if you're going to use it as a teacher, it makes more sense just to have it for the whole year. Now, maybe you decide you're going to try it out. Maybe you have some teacher money you need to spend. You could use this to kind of see if it works for you. Run maybe a pilot, or maybe your principal will say, we can find $120 to have somebody try it out. Maybe pilot it with your students. Then you come back and say, this is amazing. You want to have your whole team or your whole school or your whole district using it. Contact them directly, and they will help you find the pricing plan that's going to work for you. You can learn more by going to scribble.com. Again, that's SCRIBLE.com, only one B in Scribble, and watch the different videos to see how Scribble can work for you in your classroom. Again, I'm looking forward to using it more and would be happy to report back on how my teachers, students, and I feel about using it once I've finished. This episode's featured content involves digital citizenship, something that's very important to me and what I've been doing as an educator. We're just finishing up Media Literacy Week this week that I'm recording, and the previous week was Digital Citizenship Week. And they're both very important and very impactful for what I've done as an educator. Earlier this week, I hosted Utah Ed Chat with the topic, Digital Citizenship Doesn't Have to Be Scary. We had some great participation and had a fantastic discussion. Part of that chat, one of the questions I asked the teachers to do was to define DigCit in their own words. And I was blown away with their responses, and I'd like to share some of those here. Jared Fossen, who you can find at Mr. J. Fossen, shared, Digital citizenship is empowering students to handle the challenges of the online world while not forgetting we live offline. Whoa, I have never thought of digital citizenship totally in that way. That yes, we want to help them in all of these different online aspects, but we have to help them to also remember while not forgetting that we live offline. Man, when I read that tweet come through, it shook me. It was great. Dave Horan, who is at Downright Dave on Twitter, said, obviously there are some specifics when it comes to technology, but really it still just comes to being a good citizen, showing kindness and caring about yourself and others, just like everything else in life. This is such an important piece. Honestly, we need to be good people both in the physical world, the offline world, as well as in the online world. And I think the more we can help students to see that the two are very connected, the better. I love Dave's thoughts. Heidi Griffith, who is at Ms. Griffith STEM, said, to me, digital citizenship is using digital tools constructively and productively. Man, that just hits the nail right on the head, right? One of the big points is helping students to learn how to use digital tools. And I love the constructively and productively, because how often do we get lost in what we're doing and it's not productive? It's not helping us get anywhere. Are we showing good digital citizenship right there? I don't know. Kristen Van Brunt, who is at VB_Kristen, KRISTIN, wrote, I think of digital citizenship as participating online in a responsible, safe, and productive manner, contributing in a positive way. Again, bringing out that whole positivity piece and making sure that we're really being, again, responsible and safe. I loved what she said. Kira Bettis, who is at _K Bettis, BEDDES, wrote, digital citizenship is learning how to productively function in the digital space. It's being safe with your data, being civil in online interactions, being critical in reviewing online information. Kira put in a couple of pieces there that honestly I have never considered. Being safe with your data. Oh my gosh, that just really, really hit me. I don't know if you guys have ever considered that being safe with your personal data is part of digital citizenship. And I know, yes, we talk about the fact that, you need to be safe with like your name, not share your name and address and some of those really important things with people in online times. But for whatever reason, seeing that being safe with your data. And I think that's even more than just those very basic pieces that we often think about. Kristen Butcher at Prof Butcher, ProfButcher, said, being a full participant in the digital world who applies critical thinking and engages respectfully, meaningfully, and thoughtfully building knowledge and building relationships that improve our world via online work. Wow, you could write an entire chapter of a book just on each of those different aspects, Kristen. Kristen's a professor at the University of Utah, and man, you can tell that she's spent a lot of time thinking about that and really trying to narrow down what it is, because she's got a lot of things and it was very succinct, but yet it was very full. I really appreciated Kristen's comments there. Chris Hott, who is at BurrellGirl, BERYLGIRL, said, being the same person, having the same values, whether in person or online. Again, we need to remember that who we are online and who we are offline, it's very important that we're the same person. How often do you know people, or have you seen people who in between the two different personas are totally different? That's not good. We need to help make sure our students realize they need to be the same person both on and offline and have the same values. Sometimes people get behind a computer and they forget the values, and they do things they would never do face to face. Emma Moss, who is at Tweet Mrs. Moss, MLSS, wrote, "Digital citizenship is learning crucial, personal, technical, and productivity skills as you interact with the digital community in a positive way." Great. I loved that. Crucial, personal, technical, and productivity skills as you interact with the digital community. Again, bringing about the positivity at the end, making sure we're not being negative, we're not causing issues. But I loved the pieces in there. Jimena Lecitra at, I'm going to just spell this one, LADEIDIOMAS, said, "DigCit is about using technology properly, following rules." Man, there's, again, very short and sweet, but it really hit. I really appreciated Jimena's comments. She actually is from, I believe, Spain. And after the chat was over, she came in and basically answered all the questions almost straight through. And it was just awesome to kind of see, you know what? Here's someone that wasn't actually part of the live chat, but felt it was important enough to put her information out there that she kind of tweeted it. And I really appreciate that, Jimena. Now, how did I answer this question? Because that's one of the things I think sometimes people forget is that when you're moderating a Twitter chat, you probably should answer the question as well. So how did I answer? I said, for me, DigCit is all about helping my students and faculty to understand how their online personas are just as important, if not more so, as their in-person personas. We need to be good people everywhere. And for me, I think it kind of was hitting on the fact that, again, sometimes people forget that they don't have that who they are online should match who they are in person. It's interesting, as I was finishing up this chat, I was scrolling through Twitter. It might have been the next day. Now I suddenly kind of blurred together. But the Phoenix Coyotes professional hockey team actually had some things going on. They had recently just rescinded their right to a draft pick for the NHL because they found out that this person was not being respectful. He and another friend had mocked a special needs person, a special needs student, and had shared about it and whatnot, and it just got really ugly. And so they decided, no, I'm not going to do this. Now, some stories were pointing out that they didn't make a big fuss about this until a news reporter had kind of found it and dug it up and discovered what was going on. But here's the deal. I don't really care why they found out about it. They made the cut, and they were making sure to make this a point. Okay, here's what's interesting. That was his offline persona, but there was stuff being talked about online. You know, it's also interesting that many times universities and colleges have actually recently have cut scholarships to students when they go and they look them up online and they say, "Woo, I don't really need to have this kind of a person at our school. We don't want to have this." And it's becoming a bigger and bigger trend as universities and as employers are looking. Now, whether employers are legally supposed to look or not, they are looking. I guarantee it. And we need to help our students to make sure what they're doing is okay. Make sure that their online persona is a good representation of who they are. I think it's very important that we do take that time and we look at it and say, how do we help our students to fully understand that importance of being the same person both online and offline? And these questions, as I asked all the participants to share their own personal definition of digital citizenship, I thought they were incredible, you know. And here's the thing. I thought they were so good. I actually pulled them all out and I put them into a single Google Doc so that I could actually reference it for this show, but also so I could go back and reference it afterwards because I felt like I really liked the way those definitions were playing out. On top of that, I mean, I asked, that was not the only question, but that was question number one. And I was like, wow, that really hit hard there, you know. Question 2, I talked about some people are so set on being scared of what can happen online that they want to block kids from ever being on at all. And I brought up how can we help kids #use tech for good. Another question we talked about was, how do you teach digital citizenship? Is it just strictly, are they individual lessons? Are they by themselves, or do you kind of embed it in what you're already doing? I had a lot of great responses. Everybody makes mistakes. And one of the questions I brought up was, what do you do when a student or another educator falls off the horse, if you will? What do you do when they make a mistake? How do you help them? Do you help them? What's going on? Another question I brought up was parent kickback. Sometimes parents are very against having their kids online. I think especially in the elementary area. When I was teaching 4th and 5th grade, I had a parent who really pushed back on me doing as much things with the students online as I was doing. And we had one parent in particular that I'm thinking about. They basically blocked their kid from using anything, even though I tried to help them see, to help them try to see the importance of what they're doing. They just wouldn't allow their student to do this. And it broke my heart because that kid missed out on a lot of things in the year because he couldn't be involved. And we have to realize, how do we help parents in those situations? The final question I asked was about, how do you handle your own kids when it comes to teaching digital citizenship at home? And it was during that question that I had a realization that, I'm a big proponent of getting kids online and having them work and create this online persona of who they are, this online representation of who they are. But yet my own children at home, I've not spent nearly enough time with that. And it was a really good realization as I was having in this chat and having it being part of this discussion, that I have more work to do. So if you would like to look at each of the questions specifically, I actually pulled aside the information from question number 1, but you can there's actually a full Wakelet chat archive that you can find a link in the show notes for this episode, which can be found at chrisnessy.com/167. If you go to that link, you're going to find an article on my website, edtechbabble.net, that kind of talks a little bit about this process and kind of what I did, as well as it has the link to the Wakelet chat archive, as well as the list of the full. We'll have the full questions in there, as well as the document with just that first question of how do you define digital citizenship. You're also going to find a challenge there that I would love for you to think about. How do you define digital citizenship? I'd love for you to define that for me and share it out, either in a tweet or posting a comment on that blog post. If you'd like to write your definition of digital citizenship, comment on the show notes at chrisnessy.com/167, or again, tweet it out. If you tweet it out, don't be afraid to use the hashtag HouseOfEdTech. And maybe I'll read off some of those different definitions from some of you in the next episode. But again, the big piece that I really wanted to share here was to get you thinking about digital citizenship and how do you approach it in the classroom? How do you approach it with your students? How do you approach it at home with your children? How do you approach it with yourself? None of us are perfect. Are you someone who struggles with that? And if you do, how can you make it better? How can you get stronger in that area? How can you make sure that you're doing what you need to be doing? I'm a big proponent of not just having it be a 1-hour assembly and the kids are off. We've done digital citizenship. It should not be an hour assembly and that's it. Have an assembly, talk about it, but it needs to be embedded in everything you're doing. I really believe. I don't think you'd ever do driver's ed by having 16-year-old kids come into an hour-long assembly where you go over the dangers and the struggles of driving and then toss them car keys at the end and say, go forth and conquer. No, when we do driver's ed, they have students go to a class They learn about the rules of the road, and then they have to practice driving with their parents, with an instructor, and then they have to go take a test and pass both a written test and a driving test. Now, I'm not suggesting that we need to be quite as involved there with digital citizenship, or maybe I am. I think we need to be more involved than we often are. And I think the best way, like I said, is to find ways to embed that into our classrooms and into the different lessons we're doing. So that way it's not just something you do, but it's who you are and it's how you teach across the board. And this was my featured content, and at the same time, a little bit of an EdTech thought. Let's make sure we're being good examples for our students when it comes to digital citizenship and continue doing the best we can. Congratulations to this episode's House of EdTech VIP, Dr. Mary Alice BFX Curran at MBFXC on Twitter. Mary Alice is the founder of the Digital Citizenship Institute at DigCit Institute on Twitter and co-founder of DigCit Kids at DigCit Kids on Twitter with her son. Previously, she was a college professor in the School of Education at the University of St. Joseph in Connecticut. It was there her digital citizenship story began, as she developed the first 3-credit course at both the undergraduate and graduate levels in 2009. As part of these courses, it was when the very first #DigCit Twitter chat ever happened. Mary Alice is an incredible person with a huge heart who is always trying to help people see the good that can come from trying to #use tech for good. She has shared the message of digital citizenship all across the globe, from England to Nigeria to Mexico to Spain to Ireland to Canada and Cameroon in Africa, and across the U.S., including Connecticut, New York, Utah, Missouri, and even at Twitter headquarters in 2016. Mary Alice is a loving and devoted daughter, wife, mother, and friend. I've been blessed to know Mary Alice for many years and have even had the good fortune to travel with her to a few of the different DigCit summits. Follow her on Twitter at MBFXC and be ready for some great DigCit thoughts, ideas, humor, and thoughtful life nuggets. Congratulations again to Mary Alice Curran. You are this episode's House of EdTech VIP. Well, that brings us to a close, folks. Thank you for checking out this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. I really appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate you listening. Hopefully you've learned something, hopefully something stuck out to you, and hopefully you find a way to make digital citizenship a little bit more involved in what you're doing as an educator and as a human being. You know, I'd love to keep this conversation going. I'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the information shared and the resources shared in this and every episode. For this episode, you can go to chrisnessy.com/167 or send me a message by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback. You can also reach out to me directly by going to @large3eb pretty much anywhere. If you enjoyed the House of EdTech, I need to ask you to do something. First off, tell somebody about the podcast. If you share about the podcast on social media, please be sure to use the hashtag House of EdTech. Maybe you want to go leave a message, leave a review or rating on iTunes, on Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. That really does help the show. Would love for you to leave a rating and a review of the podcast. Another thing is you can become an awesome supporter. Many thanks go out to Anthony Arnaud from the New Teacher Podcast at newteacher.org, Dan Gallagher at gallaghertech.edublogs.org, Carlos Garza, Mr. G from the Aced Tech Podcast, Peggy George at pgeorge, Jeff Herb at Jeff Herb, Mike Messner at Messner_Mike, JP Presevento at the Bits and Bytes of Education podcast at jppres.com, Lori Simpson at North L. Simpson, Kyle Wilcox at Level Up EdTech. If you are interested in becoming an awesome supporter, just like these great people, you should go to chrisnessy.com/awesome. The next episode of the House of EdTech will be episode number 168, and it will be releasing on November 22nd, 2020. So, until the next time, remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.